Kim Curtis is a nationally recognized wealth management advisor, speaker, president, and CEO of Wealth Legacy Institute. She's proud to have created a firm where she can truly put her clients first, bringing the alignment she needs to feel true joy in her work. For Kim, how you deal with money says a lot about how you deal with life, and she's passionate about helping her clients find a balance. She's considered among the world's foremost experts in building wealth consciousness. She has directly worked with thought leaders, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and countless individuals looking to create an impact and a flourishing, prosperous life. It's her experience that helps people change the way they think about money and life. Kim is a best-selling author of Money Secrets, Keys to Smart Investing, and Retirement Secrets, published by Financial Literacy Press. She is recognized by the American financial planning industry as having achieved the highest level of competency and expertise. Hello, everybody. I'm so pleased to have today with me Kim Curtis, and we are talking about a juicy subject: money, wealth building, and money management. Hi, Kim. How are you?
Hello. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, and I'm so happy to have you on, actually, and to discuss about money consciousness and some taboo subjects, right, around money.
That's true. For many, it is. For many, it is.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, what is your background story? How did you come to doing what you are doing? And what was your initial relationship to money, if you remember from your childhood?
Oh, Anca, I mean, my initial relationship with money was filled with shame and unworthiness and not enoughness. My parents divorced when I was 14. And my mom got full custody of 3 teenage daughters and had no employable skills. So she applied for and received government-assisted lunches. And at the time, it was a red paper ticket, like a lottery ticket that we see today, that I had to hand to the cashier. And the symbolism of that was I was the poor kid in the school. And it was a tiny school, so it was pretty evident who those children were. There weren't very many. And so that daily transfer of that symbol definitely made a difference in how I perceived money, that my parents were divorced, that my mom couldn't afford lunch, that I was poor. And so that's kind of my money story.
That's the initial money story, right?
Yeah, my initial money story. But my mom did have something very important value-wise. And that was, she told her 3 daughters to make sure you get your education because no one could take it away from you. And that's what happened to her with the divorce, is that she did not finish school because my dad got drafted in the war. So she married a little earlier than finishing high school. So I went to college and went to law school and immediately defaulted on my school loans within 6 months of being out of school. And I had no understanding of what that meant to my credit report. I had no understanding of money. Mm-hmm. And I was completely unconscious around the idea of money and managing of money and what to do with money. So that's my 20s, early 20s.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
Right out of school. Yeah, I think of your viewers and your listeners, the shame, particularly many women have around money. And it was shame about anything. I think culturally, women take on a burden around that because basically it's all centered around our self-concept and our identity. And when you don't think you're valuable, it's hard for money to find you. It's hard to become successful. It's hard to become wealthy.
I would love for you to speak more to that. And it's so interesting because you have the perspective of the consciousness, and I hear a lot of like energy work and more on the spiritual side. And then it seems that you tangibly created a better relationship with money that is actually visible in your investments, in your business, in your bank account.
Yeah. So what happened? How did I go from that story I shared to the CEO of a wealth management firm, a multi-million-dollar wealth management firm? So what happened Anca, is that I had an anonymous donor pay $1,000 on my school loan debt. And back then it was like, in my mind, it was like $1 million. I mean, come on, put this in perspective. And the debt that I had in today's dollars was about $92,000. But back then, I mean, it was like, wow, 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 wow. And because it was anonymous, I couldn't ask them, why me? Or what do you want from me? I had to ask those questions to myself. So if in fact someone, well, and first of all, there was more going on with that because I had to even open my statement to know that that happened. And when you're in denial, like I always say that how you do money is how you do life. And if your head is in the sand on money, trust me, there are other areas of your life that you're not dealing with. Because money is this invisible thread that navigates our human existence and touches every aspect of our life, as much as we don't want to admit it. We created money, and yet it touches every aspect of our existence. So to be aware of how that is and be aware that I actually opened a statement and I actually noticed the balance go down, not up, was all part of something that allowed me to be present at the time. So when I asked those questions to myself, the question was, if someone believed in me that much, who is it that they believe in? So who am I? Who do I want to be? And the gift itself was like a snap in terms of my brain. It was this washing over of, if I were to be honest, it's love. It was this washing over of love that someone did that. The emotion on that I still feel to this day. So if you think about that washing over, someone believed in me that much, I am feeling their love. Then I had to feel my own love, my own self-compassion, my own self-love, my own self-respect. And that was the snap. So when I asked that question of who am I, who do I want to be, it started in this blanket of self-respect, self-love, self-compassion. So I think it was like this identity piece. And that was the start of me making better decisions around my life. Because what happened is things happen and events happen in our life all the time that we have no control over. My parents' divorce, whatever. We have no control over many things that happen in our life. But we do have control over how we respond to those events, which determines our outcomes. So the choice I made that day was, I am responsible for who I want to be. I can't blame my dad. I can't blame the school district. I can't blame anyone. I can't blame the stock market. Whatever you want to say, or your employer, everything comes back to who you are and what are you going to do about it. You can't control them. You can only control yourself. So the idea around money and how we show up around money is actually an inside job, not an outside job. And that's what I learned that day. 100%. Maybe not exactly that day. That journey took a bit of time, but from that point forward, I was making deliberate choices on who I wanted to be.
It's so beautiful because it does seem that that was the ignition point, the moment when you opened up your bank statement and then you realized that somebody had believed in you, maybe more than you had believed in yourself up to that point.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
And I just want to go back to something that you mentioned about the way that we are brought up as women and we are conditioned to have, in general, shame and guilt about things. It feels that it's so deeply ingrained in our identities as women, but mostly around money. And I was listening to somebody speaking about how from a very young age, we are put in the caregiver spot, right? Like little girls play with Barbies or with dolls that we take care of. So that story, I think it becomes a story of overgiving and in many ways pretzeling ourselves so that we take care of everybody else but ourselves. And it seems that in the moment where you receive validation from the outside, that opened up the possibility, the opportunity for you to recreate the relationship that you have with your own self-worth. And you called it love, the energy of love. And I could see the tearing up and the emotional charge that it creates. And I'm wondering, how do you link self-love with the creation of abundance and wealth management?
Well, I think self-concept, which is our identity, everything starts there. All success around money or love, a relationship love, other than yourself, all starts with whether you deserve it or not. And I think women today, that their self-concept does not match their actual possibilities. I mean, we are super women, superheroes, Wonder Women, and yet we don't believe it or have it fill ourselves up, like you said. I had to write down that. I wrote down what you said, the caregiver spot. If we get a compliment, we don't accept it and we diffuse it and pass it back to them. Like, we got to give it to them. They need it more than us, or whatever the reason is. It could be conditioned. But when you believe that you have a voice, that I can see you, that you are worthy of such love for you first, then the possibilities become enormously abundant because you don't self-limit yourself. And money comes down to our beliefs. And our beliefs start, like you said, very early on. So I think the conversation is, what were the messages what were the money messages given to you growing up? That, oh, don't worry about it, it will be taken care of by someone else, that you'll get married, or I'll take care of you, your dad, or whatever it is. Or that it's dirty, or that, it's inappropriate to talk about money. So we table it, or we think we're not smart enough, kind of like math. And yet we're all genius and imperfect. So when you think about that understanding that if you understand it navigates our human existence, if you understand that everything we do ties to it, and if you understand the number one thing to ignite that light is your self-concept or identity, which starts with love, self-compassion, self-respect, then all of a sudden that light shines bright out there. If you're looking at a flashlight and the batteries that are within it, the batteries are what I just described. And then that light allows for the possibilities of success with money, of success with life. Because once you take on the role that you're in charge of your destiny, not anyone else, by the choices you make, all of a sudden, that awareness, that consciousness will allow you to make better decisions. Because when you're aware, that's the source of everything. That's like the higher self talk. You've just hit the higher self. And I think that's what happened to me at that gift. I got out of my head, the thinking part, and went into my heart. And the heart is really where the source is of all higher self energy. Mm-hmm. You could use whatever word you want. It could be God, it could be source, it could be universe, it could be whatever makes you feel comfortable.
Yeah. We spoke about this on previous episodes, that the heart has a wider magnetic field than the brain. And it's just really interesting because in my experience of you, you are somebody who tangibly speaks about money and wealth management. And yet you have a very well-developed understanding of the energetics of money, which of course it shouldn't surprise me, but see, my own conditioning around that in certain ways, they cannot really coexist. And I think that this is another story that I had to deconstruct for myself as somebody who has always had a predilection towards spirituality, and understand that being open to creating wealth by being of service, or just creating wealth because I believe that I deserve it and I can, is not something that I should shy away from because somehow I'm less spiritual, or I'm doomed for hell because I want all this. I like Ferraris.
Right. Nothing's wrong with any of that.
I'm wondering, how was the process for you to uncover these beliefs around money? So we had that moment where you felt a showering of love by receiving this gift, and then you mentioned that there was a process. How did that look for you, and how does it relate to the way that you are supporting other people change their relationship with money?
So I went to law school. So I am very much a left brain data geek, quantitative girl. But I also have this other side that is qualitative. And so I think I really do a pretty decent job putting it in balance. So my area of expertise in law school is negotiation, mediation, and arbitration. And I ended up in finance by a quiz. I had many of the listeners or viewers have people that work for human resources, or that are the chief people at their firms, and they have all of these assessments to figure out what would you be good at. And I had a friend in HR, human resources, and she put me through a battery of tests, and it came out that I would be good in finance, personal finance. And so I'm like, oh, that's easy, because the job I had, I was the regional vice president of a national corporation. I was the youngest in the country, reported to the president in New York City. And I'm thinking, this is a piece of cake. I could do personal finance. And then I was like, oh, my background. I know nothing about it. Who am I? Right? Instead of saying, why not me? But I did say, why not me? And so when I was 30, I made that career shift from alternative dispute resolution to personal finance. And so I think the evolution of, when you think of mediation, arbitration, you're already bringing other elements in that are not so adversarial. You're trying to come up with a win-win versus a win-lose. And so when you think about money and life is a win-win, but many of us look at it as limited versus unlimited. So many of us look at money in a scarcity mindset. And so versus abundance, which is where you were taking me, that unlimited abundance and unlimited resources. And I think what I, on my own journey, had to uncover, and actually this may be helpful. So if I don't answer, bring me back if you want to, but I think this will help answer that a little bit more, is what I discovered in my own journey is that there are two laws of money. And the first law is the human-made laws that I do every day, and it's very thinking and left brain, linear, quantitative, goal-focused, and sensory, our five senses. So when you think about that, sight, sound, taste, smell, touch. That's our thinking brain, our five senses. That's money in the human-made world. We created it to do exchange. The second law of money is the natural money laws. And the natural money laws are very heart-centered. They're very qualitative, and examples of natural money laws are giving and receiving, or ebb and flow. Money ebbs and flows. And when it's ebbing, we work on ourselves to grow. So when it flows again, we can deliver a better product out there, or have more offerings, or work on our delivery of things. So ebb and flow is a natural process, just like nature. Also cause and effect. Even mercy and justice are all natural money laws. So if you think that we have the human-made laws, which are brain, thinking, and we have the natural money laws, which are feeling, harmonized, then all of a sudden you've created that doing piece. So if you harmonize that, then all of a sudden the doing piece, kind of thinking, being, doing, puts you into action mode to co-create. And when you co-create, all of a sudden that becomes unlimited, because many of us think that we need money, when in essence that's the wrong thing to say. You will always need money if you say that. If money, so money needs you, not the other way around. Money needs you to become something, because it has no value other than the value we give it. So if money is looking for you, what do you need to do? What ideas do you need to have for money to find you? Ideas are unlimited. Many of them aren't that great. But if we knew that money looks for ideas to become of use to the world, then let's start getting a list together when we have ideas to put them down. And then what's the one best idea that I have? And then what's that next best step for that one idea? And then the next step and the next step, until maybe that's not the best idea, but maybe there's another one. And then you're in motion, ebb and flow, giving and receiving. And when you're in motion, cause and effect, supply and demand, then it's easy for money to find you when you're co-creating. Because when you're in the co-creation space, you're in the center of that higher self. Co-creation is the center of your higher self, source. So particularly women, if we believe that money is not we already have natural money laws. We're just numb to it. We're not paying attention. We're unaware. We're unconscious around that. But if we were conscious that natural money laws we already have, and it's built in, and then we work to learn the human-made laws, we're already ahead of the game. We just need to turn on the light, charge up those batteries that have gone numb, to find it. And so money looks for ideas. Ideas are abundant. And all of us are capable of coming up with co-creation in that way.
So what I'm hearing you saying is that ideas are indeed limited, and you can always step in and find the idea, but that's not enough. It's also about going into action and actually start implementing, which is really interesting, because I think about so many entrepreneurs. I'm surrounded by a lot of people who have ideas, and many people think that, they have an exceptional idea and that's gonna be what brings them the success or the wealth or whatever they desire, maybe the validation. And what I found for myself is that an amazing idea without implementation is far worse than a mediocre or a copycat idea, but with proper, constant implementation and testing, because there is no solution. I think everybody's trying to find the recipe, like follow these 6 steps and you are going to get there. And yeah, maybe there are some steps for certain businesses, but what I found for myself and working with people also is that we just go and test, and then we fail, and then we implement the lessons that we got from the failure, and then we upgrade from there. And this is this process of constantly being in action. But what you are talking about is heart-centered action. So it's not my singular self, but a co-creation with source that is directing me, and I'm listening to that, and I'm just stepping into action that is being rewarded ultimately.
Yeah, action should be with ease. If you're forcing action, then you're not on the right path. It should be with ease, and you feel it. You know that that's the right next step. And I think that's really important, because if you want to start a business and you want to quit your job and start a business and you don't really know, but hey, you're ready to do it, and it's on a field that you have no background in, that's probably not your best choice. Everything in your life has led you to where you are today, for whatever your reason you're here. So if you trust that, look at your life experiences to determine, where am I? Why am I here, whatever here is for you? that is kind of guiding you to your purpose and your passion and your vision and your beliefs and excitement and aliveness. If you don't have aliveness and excitement, then it's not the right path. You should feel ease and excitement most times.
How many people do we know that actually live their lives like this? Because I thought about how many people would love to quit their job and actually live in resentment. And I think it goes back to what you were first mentioning, of blaming their boss and blaming the circumstances and blaming God and blaming society and the financial system and the banking system. And I would love for you to actually speak to this. So if somebody finds themselves in this situation, which I think will speak to so many people listening, trapped in a financial situation, a life, in a job maybe that is not truly igniting them, then what would be 3 steps and maybe some mindset shifts that they could adopt to move in a different direction?
Mm-hmm. So we all have money receptors, just like we have for health, and it's visceral. So when we think, all over our bodies, we have receptors. And when we think about what is your money receptor, a good way to describe it is, I have a 23-year-old son, and when he sees a Lamborghini, he sees success. That car is success to him. That's his money receptor. When I see that, I think, who would spend that much for transportation? So my value is not around the beauty and the design of that car or the speed and how it handles. My value is transportation. His is he sees that as art. So what is your money receptor is the first number one place to start. Or when you see someone on the street asking for money, do you cross the street? Do you engage in conversation? What goes through your head during that time? That's a money receptor. And once you understand whether it's negative, that you've judged that person, or, however that receptor is, or positive, is the starting point of where you are and where you come from. So the second is, are you generally an optimistic person, or are you generally pessimistic person? So if you're pessimistic, it's very hard for money to find you because you're living outside yourself. You're external. And what happens in our culture is we tend to blame everything else outside of us before we actually get beat up enough to recognize that, oh my gosh, we have to start with ourselves. I was lucky enough, and I think this is the $1,000 gift that I'll give to all your viewers and listeners, is that without having to go through what I went through, but that gift allowed me to get into self-love, self-respect, awareness, consciousness quicker. But for the viewers and listeners, which side do you lean on? Negativity or positivity, optimism or pessimism? And if you're on the pessimistic side, money will never find you. So what do you have to do to work to get into a better frame of mind? If you're in a job that you hate and you feel like you're stuck and you have no choices, what could you do in that job so that you're growing for yourself while you look for another job, or while you get a second job to side hustle to bring in extra money that allows you then to have better choices for yourself? I think when we tend to be in a job that we hate, working for the man, so to speak, we tend to not give them very much of ourselves. But if you gave that job 110%, or, people say in relationships it's 50-50. No, it's not 50-50. It's 110% on your side. And it should be on their side too. So if you start looking at everything versus they owe me, versus abundance, and I'm doing this for me and my own personal growth, and in this relationship, I'm not asking for them to make me happy in my love. I am going to be happy in myself. And what do I need to do to believe that I'm worthy enough to get it? What do I need to do self-care for myself that allows me to start believing that I'm worthy? It could be therapy. I mean, whatever it is, you may know whatever just popped into your head by listening to us. Maybe your first call or that first step. Don't let it stop. Do what that next step is based on the conversation that you've heard from us to begin having more self-care and self-love. So money receptor, positive, negative, and nurturing self-care. And that helps then mindset and your beliefs. Because your mindset and your beliefs, that's really the same conversation of deservedness. And that money story, what was the money story that you have to overcome? Because is that money story yours that you just brought in that could not even, it could be generations before you in your family tree that you're carrying. So some of the things that we do in my firm is we call it a humanographics, humanity on a graph. And in the medical profession, they call it a genogram. And it's a pictorial description that allows you to, anyone can pick up that picture and see the genetics of that person through their family, whether it's obesity, high blood pressure, heart disease, you name it, addiction issues. It's all graphically done. I brought that into the estate planning realm so that we could go back through as far back as you can go generationally, starting with your parents, then your then your grandparents, then your great grandparents. Where did they come from? How did they get to where they are today? How did you get here? What were their occupations? Were they educated? What was their faith? What were the issues associated, the values of that family? And how does that showing up with you today? You know, you could have addiction and blame yourself for it. When addiction was 3 generations of family stuff that is imprinted on you before you even knew it, that you're already starting at birth negative, and not to blame yourself for that. So if in fact that was imprinted on you at birth, what are you going to do differently as the person who you are and why you're here on this planet? And not have this burden be something that you think is a result of you. Same with money. Same conversation with money. You're showing up this way, but that could have been your great grandfather was a tightwad or a spender, and now you're a spender. Listen, it's all the way through. Your mom was a spender. So understand what that is. Recognize it, label it, do what you need to do. And then, is this who I want to be? Am I going to change that story so that the story with my daughter is different than the story I got from my mom and my grandmother? Because remember, money generally wasn't accessible to women. It was only recently that we had choices around our money or our jobs. There was a time that women had to get permission from their spouse to take a job, not to mention credit. And my great-grandmother had a little stash of money, but that wasn't for opportunities. That was for protection. So recognize culturally as women all these things, and even men for a different reason, all these things baggage that we have to unwrap so that we could show up in our beautiful self around money and wealth and abundance.
I was actually thinking about the fact that we may not be aware that even today there are women in the world who cannot own property by themselves. And we are in 2024, who cannot drive a car without having permission from their husbands or their fathers. And I think they are intertwined, right? Like the idea of romantic love and feminism, they are intertwined, because the idea of romantic love is very new. It's around 100 years old. And the feminist movement is younger than that, but it's linked in the way where women understood that they do not have to exchange their wombs and access to sexual services or privileges for shelter and being a part of the property, because they were not really co-owners of the property. They were in the property, among the property. And I love your invitation of playing not zero-sum games in relationships or in relationship to money, and playing win-win games, or maybe not even games, just win-win situations, and describing and strategizing win-win situations. Because I think that a lot of people hold on energetically to money, and as you said, do not give themselves fully or serve fully, because they are constantly thinking about what they are getting in exchange for their service or for their energy, and what would become possible, under the spectrum of, you could be trapped in a situation that is maybe not honoring your genius, your zone of genius, and still choose to give 100% and to serve 100%. Maybe an ideal, maybe you can identify an ideal in that situation, right? Maybe you don't particularly respect your boss or your manager, but maybe you want to support the idea of teamwork and co-creation within a team, and show respect to your coworkers by giving your best in that situation.
I love it. I think you hit it spot on and nailed it. I mean, I have a girlfriend, a mom who has a teenage daughter, and she is dealing with her daughter's idea of her worth through her sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And, so it's kind of like, how do you tell your daughter that your private parts are not your value? That's not your self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
And this is today, that our daughters are coming up using that as leverage for whoever they think they are or want to be. And so just talking that you can't drive without permission. I mean, many of us are still dealing with some of these things today. And do we allow it? Well, one, we may not have a choice depending on where you live in the world. But are you conscious of it? Because that's really the key that we're talking about to get co-creation. We need awareness first. I didn't know that I had shame or that I didn't think I was worthy around money until that day. So maybe today we've just identified the starting point for some women and men that are listening, that the starting point really is awareness. What is the story that you're telling yourself about money and deservedness?
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that piece into the discussion. I work on sexuality, and I love bringing awareness around the fact that the creative energy that manifests or puts into form value, which is money, is the same energy as the sexual energy. And there is a story that I like to talk about, which is in our maiden, in our girl-like energy, we cannot make the part of things. We are not great with money. We are not great with boundaries. We are not great with understanding that we are deeply valuable and worthy. But that doesn't mean that we exchange our worth for attention. And that doesn't mean that people get access to our sexuality so that we can get whatever needs we need fulfilled, such as attention or intimacy or love or so on and so forth. And it's interesting because I heard this, that for women and for cisgender women, right? Like, this is my experience in this lifetime. Understanding that attracting a sacred union, how I call it, like a partnership that is based on the values that you hold, and being able to create abundance and wealth through your own gifts are coming from the same root. And that is the root of worthiness and understanding your inherent value, and not mistake it for covert narcissism, which a lot of us are doing. And that's social media, and that's living in a society that hypersexualizes the women body and hypersexualizes girls from a very, very early stage.
Yeah. So I wasn't sure to tell that story, so I'm glad I did because you're absolutely right. It's a foundation, and think about it as a teenager, we're getting those messages culturally that we have to unpack, not to mention our families. So the messages around money and wealth and abundance are all around us and from many different sources.
Yeah. And something that I also would encourage people to look into is when we are listening to radio or to music or to, we are exposed to so much information. Sometimes I hear these messages, right? Like, money doesn't matter. And, I learned to tell myself whenever I spot that to say, hey, that's not mine. And I believe that money does matter. It doesn't mean that I'm going to sell my soul for that, but I think money is really important. And all these little messages that somehow they are subliminal just because we don't really pay attention. We listen to these songs, love hurts, and then, well, love does hurt, right?
Right. So true.
Yeah. So I would love to finish on the note of gender and talking about the reasons why you think women are reluctant to investing, or if there is a story and if you saw any relationship between how men and women position themselves towards investing and managing their wealth.
Happy to. I think that it's important for the listeners to understand that money was created by men. The languaging around it is not language that we tend to lean into. I mean, GDP, gross domestic product, inflation, Federal Reserve. I mean, all of those things mean nothing, nor do people care. Women care, maybe even men too, quite frankly. So recognize that the language that was created was not language that we participated in. So that's the first. The second is, as a result, we tend to not be interested in it. There's nothing about it that's interesting. So what I see coming to our firm is it's usually men in a couple that are managing the investments. And it's usually the wife that says, get your butt in there because you're complaining about it and I don't trust you or believe that you know what you're doing, whatever it is. And maybe none of that exists, but they believe that they need help. So what women tend to lean into is when you tie managing money to a financial plan. Because when you tie it to a financial plan, it's taking care of my aging mother. It's my children and their education fund. It's what does retirement look like for me personally, and how can I get there sooner and never have to worry about it again? How can I live a life filled with abundance and joy and stay healthy and do the things that I love? So all of a sudden, when it's tied to a plan, women love that conversation. That conversation resonates. And so that's why you need to put them both together as a couple to bring the couples in together on a joint goal or vision. That's sometimes the first time that happens for couples, is that they're finally on the same page or have a game plan for the first time. But if we were to look at that conversation as a pyramid, we think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right at the bottom, food, clothing, shelter, at the top, self-actualization. Well, in 4 quadrants, 4 steps, let's have the bottom, managing money. The next is tied to a plan. That third is peace of mind, is lifestyle. When you tie those two together, all of a sudden you know you're on track or not on track. You know your reality. So lifestyle is the answer to that, which gives you peace of mind. When you have peace of mind, that pinnacle of that pyramid is impact. Think about it. Many save so they can finally live. How crazy is that? So, but if you know that that once you have peace of money is frenetic, it's crazy around us. People that come, clients that come to people like me, put money. Our job is to put money as a foundation, so that it's never around you swirling like a gnat. It's down here as a foundation to your house. So when it's here, all of a sudden you have the room to breathe, to think about, why am I here? What is it that I love? I could finally step off and actually do what I really want to do, and that's to be a musician and play music. So if we can get there sooner to live a life of purpose tied to who we are in our heart of hearts, the impact or fulfillment or legacy, whatever word resonates with you, is what we do. And we do that all day long, all day long. Who doesn't want the pinnacle of that pyramid? And we should be doing that, not waiting until we're at a place of peace of mind.
I love that.
So to answer your question, women and men generally think it's the investments. Trust me, the investments are not sexy. They shouldn't be sexy. There's nothing sexy about it. Investing is actually boring. There's science around it. Believe it or not, there's science, but Wall Street wants you to think that it's luck or skill set when it's not. There's no skill set around it in a way that allows for the average person could be a successful investor by using index type of broad-based, low-cost investments. But the success around money is long-term. You leave it and forget it, so to speak, not touching it. And you're like a bar of soap. When you touch a bar of soap, it disappears fast. That's what happens with money. You need to invest it and forget it, sort of. And the least amount of touching or fussing, the more success you will have once it's set up appropriately by using low-cost index funds tied to science. And there, like I said, there's empirical, evidence-based science out there as it relates to investing.
Yeah, because I think that everybody knows about the S&P 500 and then investing into an ETF that is linked to the index.
Right. An exchange-traded fund, whether it's the S&P 500 or the Russell 3000, which is small caps, mid caps, and large cap stocks. And then maybe a little international. And ETFs are wonderful because they're really, really low cost.
Yeah. And see, like my own journey started a while back, but to go back to the discussion that we initially started around gender, and I think that there is probably a willingness to make things complicated so that not everybody has access to that. And what you mentioned also about the language, maybe being jargonized. So using a lot like ETF, right? It's something that maybe not everybody will recognize or fire, right? Like financial independence, retire early. These are all concepts that are thrown out there, but they are not vulgarized. And I think that there is a reason why they are not vulgarized. And I feel that the most rebellious and the biggest sign of anarchy towards patriarchy is for women to take responsibility and to educate themselves. It is a journey. It's not something that 100% is going to happen in 1 week. And as you said, investments are boring because they are consistent, like a steady, consistent putting in the same amount of money over 20, That's 30 right. years. And yeah, most people like I invested in the next Google and I made, I don't know how much money.
Bitcoin.
Yeah. I mean,
digital
Bitcoin
currency, whatever the shiny object is at the time.
Yeah. But I think that Bitcoin with time will pay off, but maybe not all the cryptocurrencies that are being created. I don't know how many in 10 seconds. Thank you so much, Kim, for enlightening us around money matters. And is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
I think the one last thing that I will share that's really important is that there's no amount of money that can create an extraordinary life.
Yeah. Where can we find you online?
Yes, Instagram, Kim Curtis Prosperity. LinkedIn, Kimberly L. Curtis in Denver. I live in Denver, Colorado. And it's been really fun. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And everybody's going to find the link in the notes of the podcast and also where they can get your book and get actually more into depth.
Yes. Financialliteracypress.com, financialliteracypress.com. There's some freebies there, like the 10 laws of money everybody should know. There's also tax tips, and there's also an aging parents checklist guide. I lost my mom last year, and my older sister and I put together, I did a lot of good things, but I also missed some things. And so the aging parent checklist, it's as granular as even creating a playlist of your parents' favorite music, so that when they're no longer able to articulate their needs, you at least have their music that they love to hear. So that is on financialliteracypress.com, and it's free.
Yeah, I'm really sorry for your loss, and thank you for optimizing your grief into something that is going to help so many people.
Yeah, it's 25 plus pages. It's really packed full of data.
Sexy data. Yeah, thank everybody for tuning in, and yeah, go ahead and check out what Kim has to offer. The best way to support the Healer Hub podcast is to review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and share it with your people. Thank you so much. Deeply grateful for your support.